Burgess.
You want to maintain an asset. Sorry, Joyce?
Jess, is anybody else expected?
For the group one.
Yeah.
Let me check.
We've just got Elliot and Steve at the moment.
I think Richard has the list of. He's the one who divided the groups.
Okay. Did he put it in the chat?
No, he didn't put in it. For group one, Danny will be also coming.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think he said Danny Murphy, didn't he?
Yeah. I don't know who else is gonna join.
Okay. All right. So I think we'll press on then, and then if people join, they can do. Steve, Elliot, have you looked at all at the group one text? If not, we'll just run through that.
Do a quick refresh.
Yeah, I was going to say I haven't been able to enjoy. I sort of dived in on this one because it's a topical issue at the moment. We've had to bring in outside consultants to start asset tagging and doing a review of fire doors. And initially, someone else in the business was supposed to be taking care of it, and of course, it came back to the compliance department. So, yeah. Very topical, but we've also been drawn into some new build stuff that again should be dealt with by our surveyors, and we've realized that basically, we went to one site, myself and my colleague, and saw I think it was 20 out of 20 incorrectly fitted brand new fire door sets, all of them to damage to the point of needing replacing.
Crikey.
So I thought, right, there's a group on fire doors. I'm going to jump into that and get all the resources I can to distribute. And
I'll give you my details afterwards, Steve.
Do you know what? We need help. I mean, it was, people have probably been to architectural college or something, or surveyor training, 5 to 30 years ago. Just weren't aware of things like following the manufacturer's instructions, install instructions. Wow. How radical could that be?
Absolutely. Steve, I've forgotten where you are now.
Reading Borough Council.
Ah, yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was with Sovereign until 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And they were doing a very tricky reorg, which I wasn't part of, our department wasn't part of, but it just made it a little uncomfortable to, you're doing projects with people, they suddenly disappear. It's like, yeah, okay.
Cool. Okay. So it's probably worth, hello, Ian. Great to see you. Yeah. So it's probably worth just explaining quickly who we are just before we move on. So Steve, do you want to just give a very quick explanation of who you are?
Absolutely. Yes, Steve Wiper, Building Safety Manager, Reading Borough Council. Predominantly brought in to look after taller buildings, but getting dragged across the business depending on what the needs are, and assisting all departments now, as my colleagues in compliance are.
And how many high-rise have you got?
We've got 7 high-rise, but in the 11 to 18 metre space, we've probably got at least another 20 buildings. We haven't measured them all yet.
20 on the 11th. Okay, good. Okay. Elliot, can you give us your just
Elliot Dawson, very top line. Elliot Dawson, Distinction Doors / FDS. I'm now sales director, but was brought in to lead up the FDS side. So FDS is a fully, when I say fully compliant, it's belt braces, over 106 bi-directional tests now to EN 1634 standards. Now have door data tagging, so fully compliant with the golden thread, which I'm sure we'll come on to, George. And we sell through a fabricator network throughout the entire country, which means we can facilitate a product that is replicated and third-party accredited under BM Trada from Land's End to John O'Groats. So you will get the same product whether you are in Land's End to whether you're in John O'Groats.
Cool. Okay, Danny. Sorry, Jim. Sorry. Jim, could you just explain briefly who you are?
Yeah, just taking my microphone off. Pretty much the same as Elliot, without as much money. Yeah, so we're manufacturer, installer, maintainer. We've got guys that are covered under Blue Sky certification, FDIS. Created our own app for data tagging. Yeah, so very similar to what Elliot is doing, probably on obviously a smaller scale.
Okay, Ian. You're on mute.
You're on
Ian.
mute, Ian.
Ian, you're on mute.
Hear me now?
Yep.
Now we're
Excellent. Sorry, Ian Kavanagh of Independent Fire. I'm a fire door nerd, basically. We do inspections, existing buildings, new buildings. We do clerk of works inspections. We look at fire doors up and down the country, basically. But we go from Land's End to Orkney. So whereas Elliot stops off at John O'Groats, we go a bit further. We've been to Orkney and Belfast, I suppose, the furthest west we've been up to now. So yeah, I'm a fire door nerd. Obviously,
Okay.
with an interest because I inspect a hell of a lot of fire doors.
Yeah, Cliff, do you just want to introduce yourself very briefly?
Yep, my name's Cliff. I'm a BIM manager. That's the building information management side of this. And I'm interested in how this information is gathered digitally, put into a database so that it can be found and people can access it when the information is needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so I'll show my screen and we can then work off the draft. So this is the text that's been drawn out from the NHS guidance. And the principal thing that we want to really do here is to identify anything that isn't appropriate for Resi. So we're not looking to author the thing again, although, you know, if there are things in it that you want to contribute to or change or emphasize, then this is an opportunity to do that. But at the moment, I'd just like you to just read through this and tell me if there are things in here that you think are inappropriate for Resi. So let me know when you've got there.
Well, I read most of that. I've got a comment on the first paragraph.
Please go ahead.
I look at a lot of new build sites, a hell of a lot. And I have two guys that work for me who also look at a lot of new build sites for me. I am yet to see a fully compliant third-party certified installation, ever. So we need to be very careful about saying that third-party certification schemes should be satisfactory, because in my experience, they are fundamentally flawed.
Understood. That was the point that Neil's made as well, isn't it? So
Yeah.
basically, third
Neil
party.
Neil and I talk on a regular basis. So.
No, sure. So third party certification needs to be it is not enough on its own.
In my experience.
Yeah.
But it's an opinion based on experience, not on any particular opinion. It's an experience-based opinion.
So we need to probably qualify that. Does everybody else agree, or do you challenge that?
Yep, I'm far from challenging because I do tend to agree, and it's only recently that people have even need to have an accreditation. When you say third-party accreditation, they're not fitted to. Do you mean that they don't have the Trada or FIRAS? Right.
I'm yet to see a compliant installation. The last one we looked at was, I think it was 60 door sets. the door sets were third-party certified manufacturer. They were wrong as well. But 60 doors, and I think they had something like 160 faults across them. So an average of 4 faults per door.
Were they being captured? So I can only speak from our experience. We
Yep.
now will only operate a third-party certified, somebody who has basically TRADA certification, and part of our golden thread is that they have to take pictures at several phases of the install to ensure that it is installed to the fitting instructions of our field of application.
I've no idea what pictures they took, but Elliot, I can show you pictures.
Yeah. They're not. They probably weren't outdoors, to be honest. But I think that's the
but
problem with
but I can
new
show you
build as
pictures that
well.
have been taken as part of an installation process that don't show faults. A picture is just a picture.
Yeah,
and I can make a picture look like something it's not.
I completely agree
You
with
need to
you.
be very,
and I think
careful about the whole third-party certified process.
Okay,
That's my point.
I'm going to press on, Ian.
I don't know. It's a difficult one because I think you're going to get good and bad. And as soon as you get an industry where people think they can make money quickly, you're going to get people jumping on the bandwagon and,
Absolutely.
jump on a course. Oh, I'm okay. There you go. People sign off doors from a drive-by, a drive-by type view. I don't know what the alternative is though, because the quality clerk of works that used to be around back in the day aren't there anymore. I think there needs to be a lot more. The third-party organisations, I'm not going to name the organisation. We're accredited under FireAS, BM Trada, Blue Sky. So, take your pick, whichever one it might be. But 18 months went past and we didn't have an inspection, an audit. That's not without us asking. They just weren't coming out from their office. Now, I get it. Everybody's had COVID. Everyone's gone through COVID. But they were doing audits online, which it's crazy. You need to have people that were coming out of their office and they've not done it. And I don't think they've come back in full force even now. And I'm not completely disagreeing with Ian, not at all. But I also think the third party schemes have to pull their socks up. And I think fundamentally, they're not a bad system, but they just need to improve. Because I don't know what the alternative is, Ian.
Okay, let's press on because that's a bigger topic, isn't it? Otherwise, I'm going to get told off because we've not got through the document.
Sorry, the other thing with the drawings, drawings and instructions, we've started to do for our own property, for our own installs. We'll actually do a pilot install. We'll take a record of what structure it's going into and create a bespoke installation guide, because if you've got a wall that's a critical wall and big metal anchors into that wall, it's very different to another situation. So should there be a little bit more emphasis on how you're fitting that door into that property rather than having generic install guides?
Okay.
Would that not be in your field of application though?
But again, not everybody is going to necessarily understand the field of application. It's making sure that, and it's a bit difficult if you're only supplying, supply only. How do you make sure that you're going to do that on every job? But that's up to the third party installer to make sure they're translating the field of application into that situation and raising up if it can't be done for whatever reason and what hazards they might experience. What's your thoughts on that one, Ian?
I think a lot of installers would consider themselves very lucky if they actually got their hands on a field of application, to be honest. Jim?
Yeah.
Based on my own experiences, even, with new builds, and it sometimes takes a lot of persuasion to actually get that document. We shouldn't forget, of course, that every door set that is delivered by anybody nowadays should automatically have installation instructions. It should be there, and installers shouldn't start the job if they don't have those instructions to hand. So we shouldn't get away from that either.
Yeah, so
lots
ours
of
are on the
people are getting
door.
away with a lot of stuff, really, and manufacturers are partly to blame for it.
Yeah, so ours, like I
Yeah.
say, ours are in the data tag that are on the door. So all they
Yeah,
have
but
to
you
do
shouldn't
is,
have to. You shouldn't have to rely on electronic data, should you?
well, you shouldn't, but it's one way of ensuring that
Yeah,
it is
it's
always
only one way.
there.
It's only one way, but it wouldn't take a lot to print it off and give it with the door set, would it?
Yeah, but when anything could happen with that door set traveling to one particular place or being put up, whereas when it's physically attached to every single door, you're not telling me that the installers don't have a phone or something that can easily read that information.
Not at all. Absolutely not at all. Yeah, most do. That's part of the problem with installers, isn't it? They spend more time on the phone and on Facebook than the two taking care of the installation that they're currently faced with.
I think
everyone has it. Everyone has access. Yes, of course they do. But
Yeah.
we shouldn't rely on electronics.
But even down to the site agent, if you've got a new build, that site agent should be given the details of how them doors are being installed. So it's about sharing the information. I don't think there's anything wrong with the data tag. Brilliant. That might be great for one guy. Another guy, needs to actually read it. He might have a 1980s phone. It happens. So
yeah.
sharing that information to all the people involved, you're not hiding away. If somebody wants to go and pull off architraves and do their investigation, they've got the evidence there as to how that door should have been fitted. And it's not rocket science.
No. Well, it all goes back to, effectively, doesn't it, Regulation 38? That's what it goes back to, sharing the relevant information. And of course, it's the fact that in general, main contractors haven't complied with Regulation 38 that has led to the whole golden thread concept. Because if Regulation 38 had always been adhered to properly as it should, and clients were aware of their, let's say, rights and main contractors' responsibilities to comply with building regs, then we wouldn't have the problems that we're faced with in a lot of instances, would we?
Good, Ian. Thank you. So, are you happy with what I've written there?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that's a good start, anyway.
Great. Thank you. I'm not trying to close it down. It's just
No, I understand. We've got a lot to get through.
We've got 8 pages to go. Yeah. So, can you just have a quick read of that? I think the critical thing with this is just to pick out anything that isn't right for Resi.
I mean, 1.3, I don't think anybody that's not accredited should be fitting a door anyway.
I disagree. I disagree strongly.
Really?
Yep.
But
the
you
best
agree.
installation I've ever seen is by a guy who will never be third-party certified. Never. Because he's too small and he can't afford it. What we should be leaning towards as an organisation, I'm getting on my soapbox now. What we should be shouting out to those that make decisions is that people installing fire safety products, life safety products, should be qualified. Personally, individually qualified. That's what we should have.
That's where I want to go with it as well. As
that's
a customer,
where we should be, Steve.
From the customer side, one of the things that's missing for me is clarity about what a competent installer looks like. A certification scheme would be good. And like your man who's a one-man band, I'll take your point. He could be the best fitter on the earth. However, he could then have someone else come out, inspect his stuff and audit him at some stage, depending on what level he wants to work at. If he just wants to work in little local HMOs for people, that's fine. If he wants bigger contracts, we're not big, we're one small local authority. But the confusion for me, and I was going to ask if there's something further down the document about, and it says establishing competence on that next page 13. But that's the thing about how, without having to go and look over everyone's shoulder on every site. I know we've still got a responsibility as the ultimate client, but clerks of works, a point's been made. A lot of expertise has gone out the industry for that sort of a role, and employers agents as well. And so what we're having to rely on other people. The other thing is that when we do find something's wrong, we need them to be big enough or backed up by enough industry association insurances or something to get it put right and quickly. We don't want to be having a fight with someone, having to go to legal. We just want to get a solution and we want it there tomorrow. So from a client side, I'd make those observations about just being clear about who's fitting them, who's supervising, you know, because the fitter themselves, if there's a supervisor who's actually supervising and it's a competent fit and that's being regularly sampled and QA, there's a QA process, not too bad.
Okay, so what you're saying, Ian, is that the person that's fitting should be personally qualified.
Yes. Now, the people that organise NVQs nowadays, they've realised this, and so have the apprentice organisations. So anyone now that is doing a level 2 or above NVQ in carpentry and joinery, certainly site joinery, will do the NVQ qualification on fire door installation, which has been available for a number of years, but of course no one's done it because it was optional, but it is now mandatory.
Does joinery cover all of the fire doors? Because if they're steel fire doors, for example,
It's timber based.
okay,
It's timber based. The daft thing is that there is no guidance out there on the installation of steel fire doors. It doesn't exist. There is no BS 8214 equivalent to steel doors. So basically you can fit them how you want.
okay. Should we press on with the document? Are we happy with that? Good.
The only thing, sorry to keep, I feel like I'm disagreeing with Ian on everything, and I'm really not. I think you're absolutely right, and I completely agree. It's more about giving the guy the experience to get the, you know, the training right and make sure that he can do the job. And I completely agree with that. The only thing I am a little concerned with is when it comes to the insurance level, and I think Steve mentioned that, all your insurance are going to be looking for that third party accreditation, so that they've got to be able to have something they can pin their hopes on, that's going to be sufficient. So it comes back round to, are the third party schemes sufficient for what we're trying to do here? No, they're probably not. But what's the alternative? Your individual guy having plenty of experience and ability, when it comes to an insurance claim, are the insurers going to cover that guy?
Yeah,
I mean, again, Ian, that's probably something you're aware of. Maybe some of the individual guys have discussed that with you. I'd be you know, interested.
It's never really come up, to be honest, Jim. But I mean, anyone who's installing doors, if they're doing it as an individual, should have their insurance in place. Obviously, if it's a company, I'm not saying that companies shouldn't have third-party certification. Right. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that third-party certification scheme alone, it's not robust enough. The very fact that one manager, and I use that term loosely, but one manager can oversee 20 installers, none of whom need to be qualified whatsoever. They just need to physically be able to fit a door. I just find it ludicrous. And the whole concept of third-party certification, and that concept, to me, it's just, well, yeah.
Okay. That I agree with. It's just that making sure that the companies, the organisations have got some sort of third-party accreditation.
Okay, I'm going to press on now. Sorry. Right, so we need, I guess to some extent, that's what you're saying here, isn't it, Ian? To make sure that the individuals have got competence.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. How do you truly judge competence? Generally, you would say via qualifications, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, agreed. So by qualifications, okay. Good-o. Here we go. Okay. So how about this next one? Is that fairly straightforward? Have a quick read of that.
If you're asking me, I would remove the BRE stroke LPCB reference personally.
Okay.
It's too specific. What do other people think?
Is this just for timber? Are we just talking timber?
Yeah. Well, according to the 1.5, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
just
are you
based on
saying
people. Yeah. just
your
based
point
on
about
people.
that? Your point about that, Elliot, would be there's an alternative which is composite.
Well, yeah. I mean, we coming from a background of doing both to now we only do composite. There should be no differentiation between timber and composite anymore, really. If the door is fit for purpose, and it's fit for purpose, whether it's timber or composite.
Really,
that-
yeah. Sorry, go on. Carry on. I'm putting
No,
in.
no, that's fine. No,
Well, I was going to say, anybody inspecting a door shouldn't really be referring to any particular document, BRE, LPCB, whatever it is. The door should comply in every respect, and you shouldn't have to refer to any particular document to decide whether or not that door is compliant and operating correctly. In my opinion.
I saw the exchange this morning between Alan, Oliver, and Neil,
Yeah.
and Alan made a point on that. I can't remember the detail of it, but he was saying that he felt that it was appropriate to leave that in. But I think let's discuss it. But
Is
not
it not?
now.
Is it not more appropriate to have it inspected to the way the door should be fitted and be tested, rather than so it will have its margins? It's so
Definitely.
we can't. That's what it should be tested against, not an industry standard. It should be
Well, it's
tested.
not an industry standard. That's the problem with it. It's a very specific, probably scheme that only certain people perhaps are members of. If you're going to mention one scheme, you should mention them all.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, my opinion would be you should say the following details based on a UCAS accredited inspection scheme. That's what I would say. So a scheme that is audited by UCAS for its quality, its standard. You've got to be very careful about specifying a scheme.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's restricted and it favours certain organisations, which is just wrong.
I can't see anything that ties that back to the architect specification. So there'll be a door number and a plan. You'll be on site looking at that door. But how do you know if it's the correct door at all?
that's a good point, I think. Does everybody else agree?
Yeah.
Should have a unique door number tied back to a door schedule and a 9-month schedule.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Right, let's crack on. How about these? Are we okay otherwise? You can read these afterwards and come back with anything that we've missed, but I'd just like to be able to get as far through it as we can.
Yeah, that's the one I put out. I think
Anything here? Tell me when you've got to the bottom.
You can't say that timber has to be free from knots because certain timber has knots in it. That's a fact. But shakes is fair enough. Relatively straight grain, yeah. Patent low moisture content. In general, it's correct though, isn't it?
Okay.
Yep.
Date of installation.
That was further up, I think.
Sorry.
I think. I could be wrong.
I'll put it in there, Cliff, just in case.
Where are you saying for the date of installation to be recorded?
Cliff?
It could be on the door. I mean, when you install a boiler, there's usually a panel there, and you actually start writing on there when it was installed, so then you know when it needs to be serviced.
Yeah,
So
good luck.
if we're
Good luck
saying
leaving
doors
that on.
need to maybe have the oil changed in the door closer every so many years, that will depend on when it was installed, I suppose. So I'm just thinking if this is an audit trail under the Building Safety Act, when something goes wrong, they'll want to know, was it serviced in time? And would that start from when it was installed? That clock will start ticking when it's installed.
But this document is about what? Is about making sure it's meeting legislation, or is it trying to go above and beyond?
I would say it's above and beyond. It's not just it's to make the building safe. So I would say it's not specifically around just achieving the minimum standards. No.
Then do you go back to, and I'm sorry to keep harping on about it, that's the tag then holds that data from date of installation, and then that's when there's automated notifications for maintenance. We've found from experience, if you leave anything on the door that can be taken off, whether it's social housing, new build, whatever, people will take it off.
Especially those labels that say "Do not remove."
Yeah. Do not touch.
Yep. Yeah, Elliot, I don't think there's any question that we think it's a good idea to capture that information, but I think it's also the case that the tag might stop working, or or the company that's storing that information in 10 years' time may no longer exist. So there's. I think we need backup, don't we? I mean, you can imagine that I'm into everything digital, but you can't be completely reliant on it.
I do agree, but we've got 3 fail safes in there. So you've got the tag. So the tag has to be working at time of install. That is then instantly uploaded onto a separate server. The server is backed up in 3 locations and has a 25-year independent hosting cycle. So I agree with everything you've just said, George, but for those reasons, that's why we've done ours independently, so that we don't hold the data. One company doesn't hold the data as such, but it's there, and it's there independently for 25 years.
No, I appreciate that, but that in itself, I don't think is completely 100% foolproof. Whereas we need something that's a backup, I think, anyway, even if it's just a PDF.
But that's the database. Papers. You can't have paper for every. So when the door is installed, the customer has a database of all installation dates automatically uploaded from the date of that installation.
And how many databases in a building? I don't want to get on my soapbox on this, but if you're a landlord and you've got 100 different asset types in the building, each of which has got its own database, how practical is that for them?
Absolutely, but they don't even need to look at this database. It's an auto-generated maintenance or a referral aid for them if somebody ever questions that door and whether it conforms or not, whether it's compliant. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay, thanks. Right, so anything here at all? I think these are all fairly straightforward, aren't they?
Yeah.
is 2 to 4 millimeters about
goes-
right?
Goes back to the field of what they've been tested. You could have
Yeah.
6 mil, you could have 1 mil.
In field of applications, it generally does stay 2 to 4 mil.
Yeah, it depends what it's been tested to, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, but regardless of what it's been tested to, it will generally stay 2 to 4 in most fields of application anyway. Certainly for timber doors. The most important consideration, of course, is smoke. If you've got a combined fire and smoke seal,
Yeah.
very often a 4 mil gap very often is too big. Which is
Just
a
on
great thing.
timber.
Pardon?
Is that just on timber?
Oh, no, on any.
Well, ours is 5. Ours goes up. We've tested up to 6 mil
Right.
on our seal.
Right, but so in that case, you use a specific combined seal then, don't you, with a higher brush?
Yeah, it's just for compression as well. Gets better results.
Yeah.
But
So
that's the point. Does it need? You need to be checking surely what that door was tested to.
Elliot, with your doors, does the brush have to be in contact with the frame to achieve that?
It's part of the seal. It's part of it is part of the frame. Whether it's the threshold.
So the brush in contact with the leaf then.
Yeah.
So I mean that's generally one of the things we're encouraging our guys to look for on inspections, right? Is if you see air between the brush and the door or frame, it's unlikely to work as a smoke seal. So that's an additional to our kind of 2 to 4 parameter, if you know what I mean.
That's the overriding requirement, Steve, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like
what we're looking in situ is it likely to work? We can't change all of our doors. We can't afford it. So we're like, is it likely to work? Is it repairable within reasonable parameters, or are we, and put it in a program that within so many years it will be renewed, or if it's likely to fail, that's got to be on the list now for replacement.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. But again, you're coming back to new legislation versus old. Probably 90+% of your doors will not have been bi-directionally tested. So I fully appreciate money is the key driver in all of this. And without ever cutting corners, you have to prioritize your first batch to change. But if these doors are probably more than 6 or 7 years old, if that, they're probably not bi-directionally tested.
Okay.
What? Yeah, they wouldn't need to be if they're flat front doors, though, would they? So they're only going to open one way.
No, it goes back to in the past, it was the most onerous side. Now, if you can have a fire on either side of that door,
I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay. You don't mean for the seal. Yeah, you mean
no, not for the seal, for the actual fire test.
Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, I don't think the bi-directional issue is relevant to whether or not the smoke seals are working.
No, that wasn't for smoke seals. That was just for whether you're looking to remediate your doors in general.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're going to need to leave this and jump back into the main meeting because it's 3:00 now.
On the hinges, though, George, minimum grade 11. That should be there.
Minimum. Where would I put that?
Grade.
Sorry.
Where it says grade, it should be minimum 11 for a fire door.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If we jump into the other meeting, we've got another